In the very beginning, there was nothing but God's vision, a dream of a world overflowing with life and harmony. On the first day, he spoke, "Let there be light," and light pierced the darkness. Then he shaped the heavens, dividing the waters above from the waters below. Dry land appeared, seas formed, and the earth bloomed with plants, trees, and flowers. He placed the sun, the moon, and countless stars in the sky to mark time and seasons. The seas he filled with fish, the skies with birds. On the sixth day, the land came alive with creatures, from the smallest insects to the mightiest beasts. Yet in all this beauty, there was no one who could speak to God, love him, or freely choose. So the Lord decided to create something greater. From the dust of the ground, he formed a man, breathing life into him. Thus Adam opened his eyes and beheld the world. God placed him in Eden, a garden filled with rivers, trees, and animals. Adam rejoiced, naming the creatures and caring for the land. But soon he felt something missing: loneliness. Seeing this, God said, "It is not good for man to be alone." Then he created another being from the earth, equal, yet unique. Her name was Lilith. And God blessed them. "You are equals. Walk through this garden together. Care for it, and care for each other. Learn, grow, explore. Neither of you is greater than the other. You are both formed from the dust of the earth, and one day to that dust you will return. But while you live, live side by side, in unity." These words of God echoed deeply within Adam and Lilith. The Garden of Eden was given to them not as a place of idle rest, but as a sacred gift, entrusted to their care, to be explored, studied, and protected. They were not mere guests within its borders. They were its first guardians, chosen to preserve its beauty. Thus began their shared life, surrounded by animals that walked freely and without fear beside them. Together they learned to work, not out of duty, but out of pure curiosity and the joy of discovery. Each morning Adam awoke early, eager to observe the hidden patterns of creation. He watched lions lying calmly in the shade, birds feeding their young, wolves gathering into small packs as they made their way back to the shelter of the trees. They move with purpose, Adam reflected. The lion does not chase unless there is need. The owl waits patiently before it strikes. Everything here follows its own rhythm, its own mysterious order. Lilith listened and answered, "Even silence carries a rhythm, if you listen long enough." Yet unlike Adam, who delighted in watching and pondering, Lilith rarely remained in one place for long. Her restless spirit urged her onward, always seeking, always moving. Curiosity drew Lilith to every new sound, every unfamiliar tree, every path she had not yet walked. While Adam would sit and quietly observe his surroundings, Lilith's voice always asked, "What lies beyond?" She touched the bark of trees with her hands, picked up stones to study their shapes, and dipped her fingers into the water to feel how its temperature shifted from morning coolness to evening warmth. Where Adam often moved cautiously, testing each step, Lilith walked with confidence, as if she already knew the garden would reveal its secrets to her. She did not fear wandering alone, even into the deepest corners of Eden. Within her burned a restless spark, a thirst to understand the meaning behind all things. One day, while Adam sat beneath a fig tree, watching a herd of animals by the riverbank, Lilith returned from a long journey. Her eyes shone with excitement. "You missed the northern edge again. Beyond the tall palms there is a hidden clearing. It smells of cinnamon. I saw deer there, and birds whose songs I had never heard before. Their feathers were fiery red." Adam looked at her with surprise. "You went that far on your own?" Lilith smiled and replied, "I was not alone. The wind was with me, and the birds." Adam admired her courage, though he did not always understand her. He often preferred what was familiar and safe. Lilith, on the other hand, grew impatient with anything that repeated too often, always longing for new discoveries. At night, Lilith would lie on her back, gazing at the stars, tracing their slow movement across the sky. "There is something beyond all of this," she whispered. "I do not know what it is, but I can feel it deep inside. The garden is beautiful, but it is not everything. I want to see all that God has created, not only what surrounds me here." They shared the same Eden, yet they moved through it in different ways. Adam found comfort in order and routine. Lilith drew her strength from change and discovery. And still, they often spoke together. Sometimes about the names of animals, sometimes about their dreams. "Do you think God dreams?" Lilith asked. Adam thought for a moment before answering, "Yes, and perhaps we are part of his dream. But I believe that dream does not end at the garden gates. One day, maybe, we will be allowed to see more." They ate together beneath the shade of tall trees, swam in the river when the air grew hot, and rested when the sun sank below the horizon. Yet even in those quiet moments, Lilith's mind would not rest. She was always asking questions. Why is one tree taller than another? Why do some birds build their nests high among the branches, while others make them low in the grass? Why do some creatures cling to the water, while others are drawn to the fire? Have you ever wondered why God made so many things we cannot yet understand? Why give us a mind, if not to use it? Adam would smile and reply, perhaps to test if we can be patient. Or perhaps so we might one day ask him directly. But even within their differences, harmony still reigned, at least, for now. Both were formed from the same earth. Both were given the same breath of life. They both loved the garden, though in different ways. From the very first days in Eden, it became clear that Lilith's bond with nature was unlike anything Adam had ever witnessed. She did not seek to conquer the garden. She became part of it. As she wandered alone into the farthest corners of Eden, she was learning to listen. "The garden speaks," Lilith said. "Not with words, but with signs. The curve of a vine, the way bark peels from a tree, the path of a butterfly before it lands. Nothing is accidental. I do not force the earth to reveal itself. I wait until it is ready to show me." Adam often watched her when she returned from these long journeys, carrying leaves or grasses in her hands. In the evenings they sat by the river, and Lilith shared her discoveries. "Today I found a patch of roots that release a bitter scent in the warm air. I believe they fight infection. I noticed the deer reaching for them, but only the sick ones. As if they knew." Adam marveled. "How do you remember all of this?" Lilith smiled gently. "I don't even try. The knowledge simply stays with me, as if it wants to be used." She never saw nature as something to be controlled. Instead, she watched, waited, and slowly learned to understand. Her hands grew skillful in mixing leaves and bark into healing ointments. Her fingers became gentle as they treated cuts and burns. No one had ever taught her. The world itself was her teacher. One day, as she walked along a quiet path on the western edge of the garden, Lilith noticed movement in the tall grass. There lay a lion, large and strong, but clearly weakened by pain. His fur at the shoulder was stained with blood, and his breathing was shallow and heavy. Adam, seeing this, would have stepped back. But Lilith, without hesitation, knelt beside the great beast. "Pain is not something to fear," she whispered. "Pain is something to understand. If I do not turn away, if I remain still enough, even the wildest creature will allow me to help." She fetched water from a nearby stream, soaking soft pieces of bark to wash the wound. Then she reached into her pouch and drew out a handful of crushed herbs, plants she had gathered days before, not knowing why. Carefully, she pressed the paste into the lion's wound, whispering softly as she worked. The lion did not growl. He did not flee. He only breathed slowly, as though he knew he was safe. Later that night, under the canopy of stars, Lilith shared the moment with Adam. "He did not flinch, not once. I believe he trusted me. Not because I am strong, but because I was not afraid." Adam asked in wonder, "You didn't even call for me?" She smiled. "I didn't need to. The garden gave me everything I required. The stream, the herbs, the silence. Everything was near." From that day on, the animals began to seek her out. Birds would land upon her shoulders, and creatures came closer, drawn to the peace she carried. The wounded creatures approached her without hesitation. Even the most cautious animals stayed close by her feet, as if her presence itself offered safety. Lilith never treated animals as lower beings. She did not see herself as their ruler or their savior. To her, they were fellow creations, each with its own place, its own strength, its own wisdom. And because she honored them this way, they returned her respect with trust. "I do not wish to change the garden," she often said. "I want to know it. I want to understand what gives it breath." I believe this is what God meant when He told us to care for it, not to rule over it, but to be part of it, to guard it without destroying. She often told Adam that books would never have helped her, even if they had existed. Her knowledge came from the flight of birds, from the way some plants leaned toward her fingers while others recoiled, from the scent that lingered in the air just before sunrise. "This vine grows only on the northern side of the trees. I think it follows the cold, perhaps preferring the shade." Adam would shake his head in wonder. "I would never have noticed that." Lilith would smile softly. "That is why we are both here. You see what I do not, and I see what you have not yet sought." But as time passed, even in their harmony, something between Adam and Lilith began to change. At first, their differences seemed harmless. Adam spoke with confidence, sharing what he believed to be truth. Lilith listened with curiosity and silence, not always agreeing, yet choosing peace over argument. But over time, Adam's words began to carry a new tone. It was no longer about unity, but about hierarchy. You know, I was created first for a reason. I was the one entrusted to name the animals. I was shown the garden before you even existed. Lilith answered calmly, yes, you were created first. But that does not mean you are greater. Adam insisted, order matters. God gave me responsibility. You were made as a helper, someone to walk with me, to support me. Lilith's voice grew firm. To walk with you, yes. But not behind you. Her words hung heavy in the air, like the beginning of a wall forming between them. Adam did not yet see it. But Lilith did. In the days that followed, their conversations shifted. What began as exchanges of ideas ended in arguments. Adam saw himself as the center, believing everything flowed outward from him. Lilith saw the garden as a circle, not a ladder. Why must you question everything? Adam demanded. There is order in all things. Someone must lead. Then walk your own path, Lilith replied firmly. I will not follow a road I did not choose myself. From that night onward, the distance between them began to grow. They still sat together, still shared their meals, still exchanged words, but something was changing. The warmth between them cooled, and the stars above seemed quieter, more distant. Adam remained in the heart of the garden, clinging to its center. Lilith wandered to the edges of Eden. Among the hills and mist-covered rivers, she found a silence that did not judge her, and a life that asked nothing in return. More and more she spoke only to herself, not aloud for others to hear, but in whispers carried away by the wind. He speaks of order, she thought. But I feel caged. I was not born to serve. Not Adam. Not anyone. My hands were made to heal, not to obey. My eyes were made to see, not to bow. One evening Adam came upon her by the stream. She sat alone, her feet dipped in the water, tracing patterns in the mud with her fingers. Adam stood still and said quietly, You have grown distant. Lilith looked up at him. And so have you. Only in another way. Silence lingered between them. Then she added, I have been thinking about us. About what God said. You were created first. I was told I was made to be your companion. That means you must stay beside me, Adam insisted. Yes, beside me. But there must be structure. That's how the world works. Someone leads, someone follows. Lilith's eyes flashed. And who decided you would lead? God, or you yourself? Adam replied sternly, This is not about pride. It is simply the way of things. The one who came first carries the burden. He bears direction. He becomes the voice. Lilith's response was sharp. Then carry it alone. Arguments came more often. Adam still loved Lilith in his own way, but he could not see that his view of her role was narrowing her world, forcing her into silence. Lilith still cared for Adam, but she could not breathe in a place where obedience was valued more than her voice. He wants peace, she thought, but only if it is silent peace. I too want peace, but not at the cost of my voice. At times she still returned in the evenings, sharing with him stories from corners of Eden Adam had never seen. Today I saw an owl among the northern trees. It blinked twice before it flew away, she said with quiet wonder. But Adam shook his head. Why wander so far? Everything you need is right here. Lilith answered firmly, That is where you are wrong. I need silence. I need the unknown. I need to find meaning for myself, not wait until someone tells me what it should be. You make everything harder than it needs to be, Adam muttered. No, Lilith answered, her voice steady. I simply refuse to soften the truth. Sometimes Adam tried to mend things, bringing her fruit or asking about the birds, as though reaching for simpler days. But Lilith felt it. His gestures came not from true understanding, but from a desire to keep everything as it was. And though she was not always angry, a quiet distance was already growing within her. She was still gentle with the animals, still kind to the trees, still filled with quiet joy whenever she discovered a new flower in bloom. Yet the more she was told who she should be, the more she withdrew. Why should I bend myself to fit into someone else's version of harmony? She asked within. If balance means I must be smaller, then it is not balance at all. It is control. The last time they sat together by the river before their parting, their conversation began softly, almost like a whisper. Adam asked, "Do you still believe we should be one?" Lilith replied, "Yes, but not like this." "Then how?" he pressed. She answered firmly, "With space to breathe, with the freedom to choose. You want unity, but only if I agree with you. That is not unity, Adam. That is silence pretending to be peace." She rose to her feet, brushing the dirt from her hands. "I will not vanish simply to keep things calm. I will not lower my voice just so it can be heard. I will not remain in a place where I am unseen for who I truly am." And though she did not leave that night, she no longer returned to the same places. Her body remained in Eden, but her spirit had changed. Adam sought her less often. He spoke less. And the silence between them grew heavier. And the air between them, once filled with laughter and discovery, now held only the memory of what could have been. God watched in silence. He saw the tension rising between Adam and Lilith, how words no longer carried warmth, how their eyes turned away more often than they met. He saw Lilith walking alone, reaching for something greater than the garden. When he finally came to her, it was in the stillness of early morning. Lilith stood in the center of Eden, beneath a tree that bore no fruit, the place where she often returned when she longed for silence. The presence of God surrounded her, and she knew he had come. Lilith, the garden was created in harmony. Adam was given a role, and you were given a role beside him. But the order has been broken. In your heart lies resistance that no longer hides. Why do you reject what was given to you? Lilith lifted her eyes. Because what was given to me came with chains I did not choose. The voice of God was calm, yet unshakable. You were not created to rule, but neither were you created to be ruled. You were made to walk beside Adam. Yet in every union, someone must lead, and someone must follow. Lilith answered firmly, "Why must it be so? You made us both from the same earth. You gave us both breath. And yet I am asked to step back, to silence the voice you placed within me. I cannot do that." God looked upon her. "Then I give you a choice. You may stay." Now I want to hear from you. If you were in Lilith's place, what would you choose? Peace without a voice, or freedom with all its weight? Share your thoughts in the comments. But to remain in Eden, God said, you must accept Adam's role as head. That is the structure given to the garden. It is not punishment. It is order. If you cannot accept this, then you may leave. Lilith closed her eyes. She had known this moment would come. She had felt it long before. In the way the trees no longer swayed as she passed, in the silence that grew heavier even in nature itself. It was as if the garden already sensed her decision. "And if I leave?" she asked. "Then your path will be your own. But it will be beyond Eden. You will no longer live under the garden's protection. You will face the untamed, the unknown. There will be no comfort, only freedom, and what you make of it." Lilith lifted her head, her voice unwavering. "Then I choose to leave." For a moment there was no reply. Even the garden seemed to hold its breath. God had given her the choice, perhaps thinking fear of the outside world would keep her. That Eden's beauty would be enough to bind her. But Lilith had never stayed out of fear. She stepped forward, her eyes fixed not on the garden, but on the sky. And then it happened. Her back arched, not from pain, but from release. From deep within her being, a power awoke. Not from heaven, not from without, but from within. Wings began to grow. Dark, vast, like the night before the first dawn. At first, they moved slowly, as if waking from a long sleep. God watched her. He did not stop her. He did not raise his hand. He had given her choice. And she had chosen. "So be it," Lilith spoke. "I leave without anger. But I will not remain where I must bow in order to be accepted. I was not made to kneel." Without another word, Lilith spread her wings. They cut through the air as though they had always belonged to her, waiting only for the moment to awaken. With the final breath of Eden's gentle wind, she lifted from the ground and flew beyond the boundaries of the world she had known. She did not cry. She did not look back. She flew because she loved herself enough not to remain where she would be forced to forget who she was. The garden did not call her back. Adam did not chase her. Lilith soared onward until the green of Eden gave way to barren sand. And there, beyond the world woven by divine order, she descended. The desert stretched vast, dry, and empty. Yet to her, it was not lifeless. It was honest. "Here," she said, "no one tells the wind where it must blow. No one names the stones. No one asks me to become smaller so they can become greater. This is not comfort, but it is truth. And I can build from truth. Days passed into nights, or perhaps nights into days. For time did not move in the desert as it had in Eden. There was no tree to cast shade, no river to refresh her lips. Yet Lilith did not falter. She found shelter among the rocks, listening to their silence. She spoke to the stars. She gathered dry herbs and mixed them, as she had once done in the garden. "I am not alone," she whispered. "I have the sky. I have fire in my hands. I have the memory of Eden and the strength of knowing I left it on my own 2 feet." In the distance shimmered the Red Sea, a place where, in later stories, chaos and drowning would be told. But for Lilith it was peace. The sea did not judge her. It did not ask who leads and who follows. It simply moved, needing no permission. Some say I chose exile, but I chose freedom. The price was high, but not higher than my soul. Lilith whispered these words inwardly, knowing they would echo within her as long as she lived. She had taken her path without hesitation. Her heart never doubted her choice. But the desert had its own language. Time left marks upon her, marks that no wind could erase. The first days were filled with movement. Each discovery brought her strength. But as the days stretched into silence, the world around her grew still. And in that silence, something heavier than sand settled within her. I asked for freedom, and I have it. But freedom is not always peace. It is also weight. The weight of loneliness. The weight of hearing only the echo of your own voice. There were days when her thoughts wandered back to Eden. She remembered the sweetness of figs, the murmur of the river at dusk, the rhythm of Adam's footsteps beside her. "Sometimes I remember his face," she reflected. "Not how he looked at me, but how he did not. Even when I stood beside him, his eyes drifted past me. He called it order. I called it absence." Her body grew leaner. Her skin darkened under the relentless sun. Her hair tangled in the dust and wind. But her spirit did not fade. It endured. Her days gained rhythm, gathering wood, boiling water, tending to the small shelter she had built from stone and roots. And the nights were filled with thoughts. She lifted her eyes to the stars and spoke to them as if they could hear. What is the meaning of creation if creation cannot question the hand that shaped it? What is the purpose of breath if it must be held back to preserve peace? Then she would hum. Broken melodies without words. Songs that reminded her her voice still existed, even if no one answered. And that night, the desert was no longer dead. Stones felt the footsteps, as if they themselves came alive under the weight of new beings. Shadows danced across the rocks, rejoicing in their birth. The wind, which had always carried only dryness and cold, now whirled in rhythm with their wings, echoing the cries, laughter, and howls that erupted from their throats. The desert, once silent, was filled with voices that no one dared to silence. The demons born from Lilith were not senseless chaos. Each had a face, a movement, a voice. Some sang long and deep, like the wind in the mountains. Others laughed sharply and suddenly, like fire bursting out of molten stone. Some whispered, their words mingling with the sand, and it seemed that the very earth listened to their confessions. Together they created a chorus of freedom, rough, wild, but true. Lilith stood among them, and her eyes were no longer the eyes of an exile. They burned with the light of a mother who had found her own family, even if that family was forged of darkness and fire. She looked upon her children and said, "You are my proof. Freedom can give birth to life. It does not have to be quiet or convenient. It can be loud, uncomfortable, defiant. But it is real." And the desert began to change. Where her offspring flew, traces appeared, not marks of ruin, but signs of presence. Stones cracked, whirlwinds rose from the sand, and above them flared new fires that shone like stars. The world that God had left outside Eden began to take on a new form, not paradise, but alive. It was a world of freedom, and Lilith stood at its heart. Around him, the garden remained, but it was no longer what it once was. It did not vanish, it did not lose its fruits, it did not turn into a wasteland, and yet a crack appeared within it, invisible but deeply felt. For Eden was made for two voices that echoed one another, and now one of them was silent. Where there had once been a question and an answer, there was only a monologue. Even the animals, who knew no words, felt this absence. They began to withdraw, as if the very rhythm of life had turned away from Adam. At first, Adam did not understand it. His steps were the same, His days seemed the same, but the air no longer carried fullness. He spoke aloud to himself, but the more he spoke, the more he felt the emptiness grow. And this emptiness was not only in the garden, it was in himself. For when Lilith left, she carried with her part of the music, part of the movement, part of the force that made the world whole. At first, Adam thought he liked the silence. But soon he realized, it was not the silence of peace, it was the silence of emptiness. In the first days after her departure, he still believed Lilith would return. He told himself she had only gone to be alone for a while, to think, to wander, as she often did. He expected to see her emerging from behind the trees, carrying new plants in her hands or telling new stories. But days passed, then weeks, and Lilith did not return. He sat by the stream where they once rested together and stared at the water. He remembered her laughter, the gentle way she touched the plants, how she listened more than she spoke, how she never waited for permission to explore. She was never afraid, not of me, not of God, not of the unknown. She moved as if she belonged to herself, Adam thought. He remembered their quarrels. He believed he had been right, that the leadership had been given to him, that she was meant to follow. But now, with no one left to follow him, he began to question what that leadership truly meant. One evening, Adam stepped into the center of the garden and cried out to God. His voice carried confusion, and something that sounded like regret. "The woman you gave me has gone. She left me alone. I did as you commanded. I gave her a name. I cared for her. I followed the order." There was a long silence. Then he spoke again. "But if Eden is perfect, why does it now feel unfinished? Why, without her, does everything seem so small?" God listened. He did not answer at once. He let Adam speak until his voice faded into silence. "She was difficult. She did not want to follow me. She challenged me. But when she spoke, the animals listened. When she walked, the trees seemed to bend. The garden felt larger with her in it." Time passed, and Adam grew silent. Not because he had nothing left to say, but because words had become heavier than before. For many days, he sat in the same place. He ate fruit in silence. He walked through the garden, but no longer gave names to anything new. Everything reminded him of her. Everything reminded him of what was lost. And then God spoke to him again. "You asked why she left. But the real question is not why she left. The real question is why she could not remain." Adam lifted his face slightly. "Because she refused to obey the command." "No," came the voice. "She refused to be less than what she was. And that was not disobedience. That was truth." Adam lowered his head. Now he understood what he had not before. She was never mine. She was not created to follow behind me. She was created to walk beside me. And when she could not, she chose to walk alone. After this, Adam fell silent. The garden remained quiet. But it was a different kind of silence now. Something had to be done. Not to change the past, but to show the way forward. And God stood above the garden, watching the man he had formed from dust and breath. He looked beyond Eden, to the edge of the world, where Lilith now dwelled. Her choice was clear. She was not cast out. She had left on her own terms, by her own will. And yet, something still had to be weighed. God made his decision, not to bring Lilith back by force, but to confront her with a question, just as he had once offered her a choice. Then God summoned 3 angels. Their names were Sinoi, Sansonoi, and Samangeloth. These angels were chosen for a single, sacred purpose. Their mission was clear, to reach Lilith, to deliver God's command, and to ensure his will would be carried out. God spoke to them without ambiguity. "Go to Lilith. Speak the words I give you. Tell her she must return to Eden. Her place remains open. If she agrees, all will be restored. If she resists, you will bring her back. Do not delay. Act with certainty." The angels bowed in agreement. They fully embraced the weight of their duty. Then they departed from the higher realms and began their descent through the levels of heaven. They passed through fields of radiant light, through heavens filled with divine order, until they reached the boundary where creation meets its edge. Their destination was the Red Sea, where Lilith made her dwelling. When the angels reached the shore, they saw her. Lilith stood upon a flat rock at the edge of the waves. There was no trace of surprise on her face. She had sensed their arrival long before their feet touched the earth. Sinoi was the first to step forward. His voice carried firmness, yet respect, like a bell struck in solemn purpose. "Lilith, we have come with the voice of God. We bring to you his words." She did not move. Slowly, she let her gaze pass over each one of them, as if naming them in silence, recognizing their roles. "I know who you are, and I know why you have come. God gives you a chance to return," Sinoi continued. "Your place beside Adam remains open. You are still wanted in Eden. The order can be restored." Lilith listened without interruption. Her face was unshaken, as still as the sea before a storm. "Now you may choose. Come back with us. Everything that was can continue." For a moment she turned her eyes to the restless sea, then back to them. "I left Eden for a reason. I lived there under rules that were never mine. I asked to be seen as equal, but I was not. A choice was given to me, and I accepted it. I do not wish to change it." The angels waited in silence, letting the weight of their mission fill the air. Their message was not simply an invitation, it was a command. God commands you to return. This is not a request. It is duty. Then Lilith's voice rose, firm and unyielding. "God gave me freedom when he created me. He formed me from the same earth as Adam. He breathed into me the same breath. He gave me reason, and he gave me a voice. I chose to leave the place that demanded I be less. And I choose the same again." The angels replied firmly, "You speak with strength, but your decision carries consequences. You were created with freedom, but that freedom is not without boundaries. God has commanded, if you refuse his word, we must act. We were sent with authority. If you reject his command, we will return you to Eden by force." Lilith did not raise her voice. She did not move. She looked them straight in the eyes and answered, fully aware of the weight of her words. "I accept what will come. I knew there would be a price. I knew the path beyond Eden would be heavy, but it is mine, and I will not turn from it." The angels stepped closer. The air shifted, and the sea grew darker, as though nature itself braced for what was to come. Yet Lilith stood calm. She lifted her face to meet their gaze once more. "I will offer something in return. Not as a bargain, not as ransom, but for the sake of understanding." The angels fell silent. Their wings quivered faintly. One of them said in a low voice, "Speak." Lilith drew a deep breath and said, "Stories will be told about me. They will call my name in fear, in warnings, in myths. My children will be born in exile. I will raise them in a world without protection. I accept this. I accept that each day 100 of them may fall. That is the price I embrace for the life I have chosen." Her voice did not tremble. "But let there be a sign. Let there be a sign of protection. If the names Sinoi, Sansonoi, and Samangeloff are written upon a house, a child's cradle, or an amulet, I will turn away. I will honor that sign. I will not bring harm where your names are present." The angels stood in silence. They did not need to consult one another. The truth in her words carried power. They recognized her clarity. "Your request will be fulfilled. Those who bear our names will be protected from you. This shall be the sign. And your answer will be delivered to God. Then all is settled." A gentle wind rose, brushing against her wings. She stepped away from the sea and returned to the land she had chosen. The angels watched her go, then turned and ascended from the shore. Their wings spread wide as they carried her answer to the higher realms. In their flight they spoke no word. They did not question what had happened. Their mission was complete. Lilith had made her choice again, without fear, without hesitation. God received their answer without surprise. He had given her a command, but he also knew her heart. Her decision reflected the same strength she had shown from the very beginning. Her exile continued, but not as punishment. It continued because she remained faithful to the truth she had chosen. From that day, the names of the 3 angels began to appear on scrolls and amulets. They were carved into wood and written upon walls. People placed them near cradles and beds, trusting in the power of the covenant. And Lilith, true to her word, turned away from such places. She remained far from Eden, among the winds of the Red Sea, walking through a world shaped not by obedience but by freedom. God watched Adam walk through the garden. He no longer believed Lilith would return. With each passing day he moved more slowly, as though the garden itself grew larger around him. He fell asleep earlier, and each morning began without direction. Thus God prepared the ground for a new beginning. This time he created a woman not from soil, fire, or breath. He waited until Adam fell into a deep sleep. Then, with care and precision, he reached into Adam's side and drew out a single rib. From this rib God formed a new body, meant to carry peace, not trial. God gave her breath, and with that breath he gave her presence. When Adam awoke, he saw her beside him. Her gaze met his, not with resistance, but with recognition. She did not speak first. She waited. And when Adam spoke, her face opened in calm acceptance. She is from me. She is part of my body. He reached out his hand to her, and she did not hesitate. She walked beside him, listening to his words, and smiled whenever he called her. He named her woman, for she was taken out of man. In time, she would be called Eve. She never asked about Lilith. No one told her of the woman who had wandered before her. She accepted the garden as it was, and the man who led her through it. She learned the names of the trees and the flowers. She sat by the river and laughed when Adam shared his stories. Her days passed in calm routine. From afar, beyond the borders of Eden, Lilith watched. She saw them walking together among the trees. She saw Eve place her hand on Adam's shoulder. She saw her bow her head during conversation, always turned toward him. Lilith did not watch with anger. She observed silently, absorbing each moment as though it were a question. She follows wherever he leads. She hears the world through his voice. Her hands move gracefully, yet not of her own will. She was made from his body, and so she remains close to his will. Lilith remembered the garden, not its colors or sounds, but the weight of limitation that pressed upon her chest. She remembered how her thoughts had no place to rest, how her questions remained unanswered. She saw none of this in Eve. There was peace, but no fire. She lives in comfort, yet she knows nothing of the cost. She does not know that she was made out of him, not beside him. She has never walked alone, and so she does not know what it means to stand. Adam's smile returned. He no longer waited for wings above the sky, nor did he sit in silence among the trees. With Eve beside him, his words flowed with ease, and she listened with full attention. They laughed together, sometimes sang, and the garden answered back with a gentle echo, different now, but still alive. Lilith drew near to the border of Eden. The trees did not block her way, and the wind did not resist. She saw Eve resting beneath the tree of knowledge, her fingers brushing the grass, while Adam plucked fruit from another branch. She has never tasted the forbidden, because she was never told she could choose, Lilith thought. Eve opened her eyes and for a moment lingered on the golden fruit hanging low, its fragrance drifting through the air. Yet she turned away and returned to Adam. Lilith remained still. They gave her peace, but not freedom. They gave her love, but denied her choice. Without choice there can be no growth. Without freedom, no true knowledge of self. The sky dimmed, and the sun slipped beyond the horizon. Adam and Eve walked into the shelter of the trees and fell asleep side by side. Lilith walked through the tall grass. Her form shifted as she stepped into the shadow of the tree of knowledge. "I once walked this garden as a whole being," she whispered, "and I left it by my own will." They called it rebellion, but for Lilith, it was truth. Now she walked along the edge of the garden with open palms and closed eyes, as if feeling the very breath of the earth. She knew that Eve had not yet understood the cost of being created for another, and not for herself. Lilith let her body change. Slowly, deliberately, she shed her former shape. Her form grew lower, closer to the ground, flowing like water. Among roots and branches she took the shape of a serpent, a form that gave her closeness to the earth and the freedom of hidden knowledge. Silent and unseen, she coiled upward, wrapping herself around the branches. On one of the lower limbs she found a fruit, heavy and full, holding the wisdom she once carried alone. From that branch she looked down. Beneath the tree, Eve slept peacefully in the grass. Her presence was calm, untroubled. She had never questioned the tree, nor been told why it mattered. Everything in her world was given without asking, and she had never been invited to choose for herself. Lilith had come to open the way that Eve had never been shown. In her own manner, she would offer this woman a chance. Once, Lilith had spoken the name of God and walked away. Now, she would speak nothing at all. She would leave the choice in another's hands. This was not the end of paradise. This was the beginning of awareness. From this moment on, human history would never be the same. If this story stirred something in you, share your thoughts about Lilith's choice in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel to help us reach 1,000 subscribers.